contrary to popular belief, we do not have a greater mental health problem today than ever before. What we have is a greater revelation of that uncertainty or perhaps instability that we have identified as mental health dysfunction. You see, we have been approaching mental health haphazardly from the get-go. Basically, we wait until it shows as dysfunction before we determine that something has to be done. After all, this is what we do with any other organ system, isn't it? So let us look at how we diagnose and treat an organ system. And then let us look at why mental health status is different and what it is. Finally, with perhaps a better or perhaps just a different perspective on what it is, we may then be able to devise what is needed to be done to address mental health as the unique phenomenon that it is. First, let's look at organ systems. We're born with them functioning as they are designed to do. The liver functions from birth to life. It functions automatically. The heart functions. We have studied these functions and we know what they do. We have been able to measure biochemical markers and interactions, physiological balances that allow ideal function, and the anatomical and microscopic structure that allows its function. So we know when one of these organs or organ systems is not functioning to its fullest and what to do to either return it to normal function or treat the dysfunctional area chemically or surgically. With the mind, that aspect of human existence that allows both understanding and awareness, we have none of these observations. We cannot locate it anatomically. There are no biological markers or physiological markers we have found to determine understanding or feelings, or even awareness or consciousness. In fact, the mind is the only aspect of human existence that does not start fully formed or functioning. Everything is the opposite of what we have learned about any organ system. Therefore, we cannot define its normal function, and thus, when it is dysfunctional, we cannot know what, where, or where it went wrong. We can only discover through trial and error what chemicals we can use to soothe uncomfortable feelings or subdue abnormal behaviors. Then, even if we have succeeded in curtailing such manifestations, we still cannot know if the mental state has been normalized or healed. We have never discovered its normal state, so we cannot determine its resurgence or if there's any real benefit. So, what is the mind? How is its function determined? It is, so far, an existence we cannot see, touch, or even locate with even the most sophisticated instrument. Therefore, at best, we guess what it is, and at worst, we complicate it. First, how do we know that there is a dysfunction in that area of human existence? Since the objective cannot be measured, we cannot discover either its function or dysfunction incidentally. We have to wait for dysfunction to present itself. This can be the display of emotional discomfort or behavioral impropriety that a person cannot reverse naturally. We may see that there is an inability to deal with conditions that are part of their reality. We assume that they merely do not have the mental strength to manage effectively because these conditions are unfairly large or imposing. Their presence stifles what we presume is natural growth. So we focus on mitigating this, stopping the abuse if there's abuse, providing financial or mechanical support if these seem to be insufficient. We may observe that there is an emotional instability. We do not know the reason, but we want to stabilize that using chemicals that calm both the perceptive and expressive pathways. We know that these are not the source, but they're within our reach, so we manipulate them. We see irrational behavior and try to stop that or get the person to stop it without actually knowing what may have caused it. We do it through punishment, treatment, education in proper or acceptable expression. I use the word education, but it's actually training in proper expression. If we succeed, we may change or subdue the behavior. But do we address the mental health? We may see that the person is self-medicating the feelings by diverting themselves from the stresses of reality that they cannot manage. They may do so by choosing to participate preferentially or specifically in activities that are less challenging or more pleasurable, like gambling, partying, sexual promiscuity. Or they may use drugs and alcohol as a means of achieving that disconnection chemically. Then we see mental dysfunction as manifested in their lifestyle of singular pursuits that may be self-destructive, but they are unable to get out of them because they're afraid to face reality, a reality that they were never able to face competently in the first case. We may focus on providing these people help to leave that artificial reality. How? By giving them a different artificial reality that is less innocuous, like a recovery community, or protected and subdued reality where they can function without undue stress. I call it artificial because true reality is constantly imposing pressures and stresses. The idea is that by showing them the consequences of staying in the artificial reality they choose, they will progressively expand an interest in life and so balance their mental health. But they never knew how to do it in the first place. So how could we expect that by making it simple for them, they will naturally grow? Please look at what we're doing in all of these. We are actually placing responsibility for building mental health on the person because we really do not know how to reach inside and fix it. But the person doesn't know either. We do not realize or discover why the person did not develop that mental strength to face life competently in the first place. We do not give them the ingredients they need to build the resources of that system simply because we don't know what these are for that person. And we do not know because we really have never looked. So now, may I ask you, are we really doing what it takes to build mental health? Not only in those who show dysfunction, but in everybody? Let's face it. Mental strength, the properties of the human mind that can lead to mental health, is not an innate property that functions fully from birth, as do all other organ systems. We do not even know if it is an organ system. Therefore, instead of honing in on discovering what it is, we focus on mitigating the stresses, saving them from the impositions, abuses, turmoil in those who exhibit a dysfunction and inability to manage it. Treating the effects when that dysfunction leads to emotional unrest, behavioral impropriety, or self-harm. We do not systematically encourage or stimulate healthy mental function. You see, because we do not know how to measure or identify mental health, we wait for mental dysfunction and attempt to reverse, treat, or circumvent it. If dysfunction appears, we try to deal with it. If it does not, we assume that it does not exist and we leave the person alone. So we may structure management techniques and impose them because there's a solution and because we presume that the person simply cannot formulate that solution himself. So we formulate it and give it to them. We may stabilize their reality or relocate them in a visibly more stable one. We may adjust chemical pathways or interactions so established ones that may be leading to emotional discomfort are replaced. We may become their mental strength, giving them solutions as they appear to need them. So eventually and hopefully they can take over and do similarly. All this is hope. All this is conjecture. All of this are conjectures because we have never bothered to search and identify the underlying source. We do not search because we're searching for something that does not exist. We're searching for an anatomical, biochemical, or physiological condition when mental health is determined by something metaphysical, mental strength. Stress, abuse, impositions, turmoil, these are conditions that exist as part of the world. Their size is relative to the power of strength. Do you see what I mean? The size of an imposition is relative to the strength of the person. This imposition can seem oppressive to this person, but not to this. But to this person, this imposition may seem oppressive. It's all relative. The more developed is the mental strength, the more impositions can seem manageable. The less developed, the greater the impositions can seem to be difficult, unmanageable. This is not a realization within the person. It has to be defined and developed. Without that realization of mental strength, through the definition of self as the mind, and without the opportunity and guidance to develop it, mental strength can remain embryonic or just insufficiently developed. In other words, mental health and the mental strength that drives it are not natural states that can go wrong. They are empty states that have to be filled. And to do that, each person has to realize it, build it, and have a purpose to drive it. Each person has to learn how to deal with impositions, not how to not have them. Each person has to realize their mental strength is a personal experience that is determined by how they have learned to know who they are, why they are, and how they're valued in the reality they occupy. Each person has to learn and be taught that life is a state of continuous activity that may sometimes seem pleasant and sometimes overwhelming. It's up to each person to accept both conditions, explore those that seem unknown, learn about them, and by learning, make them more tolerable. Each person has to know how they can be valued, not always by others who are too busy doing the same thing for themselves, but by themselves, because they know where they're going and what they need to get there. We can do much more for a community's mental health, if we will focus not on protecting them from the things that are there to challenge them to be stronger, but by showing them how to examine these things, understand them, and know how to live comfortably despite them. Guiding, encouraging, and assisting people to build the only aspect of themselves they're required to build, and to learn to be proud of what they've accomplished there, can be more productive for them and for the people charged with helping them than can any increased funding directed at adding more helpers, creating better conditions, or providing more accessible treatments for the effects of dysfunction. It is the only part of ourselves we are required to build, we can own, and we can be proud of achieving. All else has been given, loaned, or provided. We are born with bodies that have organ systems that are functioning from the start, but we're born without knowledge and without knowing. This is the only thing we can build. This is the only thing we can teach others how to build. All else is just there. Life comes, life goes. The things that are pleasant will always be replaced by things that are unpleasant. And then again, to what is pleasant. That is not within our control. The only thing within our control is what we build within us, what we know, and our delight that what we know, we put it there. The best thing we can do for another person's mental health is to show them how to build it.